thank you for joining me in welcoming Nikki Haley to Richmond. Thank you for being here. Now, we all know we're here because we love our country. And what we know is when we look at the polls, Nikki Haley beats Joe Biden in a landslide in November. America wants Nikki Haley. Virginia, we're up. It's up to us. We are at the plate. Let's give Americans what they're asking for. Let's give them Nikki Haley. Now, I have a question. Who here has already voted? To you people who were not able to raise your hand, I have great news. The polls are open right now. If you are in Hanover or Henrico or Richmond or Chesterfield or anywhere across the Commonwealth, you can vote today. So listen to this. When you leave here, do not go home. Don't go back to work. Don't tell your bosses I said that. Don't go back to class. Don't go to your yoga class. Whatever you usually do on a Thursday afternoon in Richmond, go vote first. We need your vote. Vote today. Vote for Nikki Haley. Now, you've heard the saying, nothing for evil to triumph, good men need to do nothing. Now look around the room and have a newsflash for you. We are the good men and the good women in this scenario. But we're not going to do nothing, right? What are we going to do when we leave here? All right. And tell your friends, and take a yard sign when you leave, and a bumper sticker, and knock some doors while you're at it. Now, I have the great honor to introduce our next speaker, someone who has been a positive influence for me in my life, personally and professionally, since I started knocking doors in Albemarle County when I was 8 years old. Now, the chair of Virginians for Nikki Haley. She may have South Carolina roots, but we claim her as our own now in Virginia. The former and forever First Lady of Virginia, Susan Allen.
Because it's a wonderful, wonderful time to be in our great Commonwealth and to get geared up for Super Tuesday. We are super, super happy you're here today. And we know you have friends who wanted to be here and couldn't. So now you're going to have to get on your phones after you leave, on your way to go vote, to text them and remind them that Nikki is our person. We need her in the White House more than ever. So thank you for being here. Is an all-star. Those of you who have been involved in campaigns around Virginia know what it takes to be involved in a campaign, and Christy has done tremendous work behind the scenes, helping candidates, doing so much to bring people together, to grow our party. And those of us in this room, Reaganites, conservatives, those of us who believe in a better America because we bring people together, are gathered today because we are happy to have a choice in Virginia on Tuesday. And that choice is none other than Nikki Haley. No doubt about it. Now, I've been carrying Nikki Haley's book around for quite some time. You know, she did end up being ambassador to the UN after being a great governor in South Carolina, but I met her long ago when she was a state legislator. And I have followed her career and said, when Nikki runs, I'm with Nikki. I'm sticking with Nikki. As long as she's in, I'm here with Nikki. I hope you feel the same. You know, when I was at South Carolina at school, at University of South Carolina, some of my girlfriends there, yeah, we got some Gamecocks in the house. Gamecocks still love our Clemson Tigers when they're running for president, right? We don't hold that against Nikki. Some of my girlfriends down there would move away and start groups called GRITS. Do y'all know what GRITS stands for? Girls Raised in the South. And there is something special about girls raised in the South. You know what that is? oftentimes they're steel magnolias. And we've got the best steel magnolia in the house today, Nikki Haley. She's one heck of a strong steel magnolia. And here are a few reasons why I think she's going to be a great president. Number one, she has integrity. Integrity matters. You can take her word to the bank. You know she says what she means, and you know exactly where she stands. Integrity. She has electability. We know she can beat Joe Biden, and we know that she will help people on the ticket with her. Anybody running for the U.S. Senate, Congress, governor across the great country, if Nikki's at the top of the ticket, she's going to have long coattails that help them get elected. We know we need a woman with grit and grace who can look our enemies in the eyes and say to them that they are doing wrong. Putin needs to be called out for the animal he is. He's a person who throws his political adversaries not just in prison, but kills them. Putin is the enemy. We need somebody who's willing to stand up against him. We need somebody who stands strong with our allies, making sure that countries like Israel know that we will stand with them and that we will never leave their side. Nikki also knows the trouble that we're having at our border. There is no doubt about it. The Remain in Mexico policy needs to be put back into place, and we need to know who's coming in the north and the south. And Nikki will stand strong for securing our border. You know what else is important about Nikki? She not only understands our military families and the sacrifices that they all make, she's one of them. Nikki, thank you to your family for the sacrifices you're making as your husband. I know it's hard for her at times when she can't just call her husband because he's deployed clear across the world. But we are grateful to men and women like him and families like hers that are willing to sacrifice. And you know what else we need? Ronald Reagan knew that we were stronger when we had strength through peace and when our fiscal house was in order. Isn't it time we send an accountant to the White House? Nikki worked with her mother at a small business in South Carolina growing up and kept the books. She's been doing it all her life. We need somebody in Washington who knows that wasteful spending is bad for our future and that we have priorities as a federal government, and a president needs to be there to call up those priorities and make sure that they're tended to. There is no doubt in my mind that we have in the House one of the best people in our country who can go and serve the public, bring people together, unite people, conservatives, everybody who believes in a stronger, better, more efficient, blossoming America. And that's our very own girl from the South, our steel magnolia, Nikki Haley. Please welcome the next President of the United States.
Out. It is quite the time here in the country, and I love that you understand that this is the time to have your voices heard. You know, you don't have to look at the news to know how tough things are right now. It's pretty bad. We're $34 trillion in debt. We're having to borrow money just to make our interest payments. China owns some of that debt. And for the first time, we're paying more in our interest payments than we are in our defense budget. You know who pays attention to that? Russia, China, and Iran. And I would love to tell you that Joe Biden did that to us. And he has sent us down this mission creep of socialism that's dangerous. It has to stop. But I've always spoken in hard truths, and I'm going to do that with you today. Donald Trump and our Republicans did that to us too. You go back and look at the $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill that they passed with no accountability, that's now expanded everybody on welfare. We have 80 million Americans on Medicaid, 42 million Americans on food stamps. That's a third of our country. And did Republicans try and make it right? Nope. They doubled down and opened up pet projects and earmarks for the first time in 10 years, pushing through 7,000 of them last year. In the 2024 appropriations budget, Republicans put in $7.4 billion worth of pet projects. Democrats put in $2.8 billion. Now you tell me who the big spenders are. All while 1 in 6 American families can't afford their utility bill. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 50% of American families can't afford diapers. Something's got to give. And that's why I think it is time that we finally had an accountant in the White House. So how would we go about fixing it? The first thing we do is claw back the $100 billion of unspent COVID dollars that are still sitting out there. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, let's go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud. 1 out of every $7 was spent fraudulently. If 8% of our budget is interest, quit borrowing. Cut up the credit cards. You have to balance a budget every day. I had to balance a budget as governor. Why is Congress the only group that refuses to balance a budget? We'll stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, we'll eliminate the pet projects, and I will veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels. That will save us trillions. And then we're going to take as many federal programs as we can and send them down to the states. That will dramatically reduce the size of the federal government, and it will empower people on the ground. Think education, think healthcare, think welfare, think mental health. If we cut the strings and sent those down, then instead you've got people closer to the ground making the decisions on how those funds are used than Washington, D.C. bureaucrats. And then we want to open up the middle class. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. That's why we want to cut taxes on the middle class and simplify the brackets. We want to eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country. And we want to make small business tax cuts permanent. Small businesses are the heartbeat of our economy. We need to start acting like it. And you know, we were talking about Congress. You know, Congress only has one job. One job. That's to make sure that they put out a budget on time. All you got to do is turn on the news and see that they're talking about another shutdown. Well, you know what I say about that? First of all, do you know they've only given us a budget on time 4 times in 40 years? 4 times in 40 years. What I'll say to that, you don't give us a budget on time, you don't get paid, period. Time we had term limits in Washington, D.C. Don't you think we need to have mental competency tests for anyone over here? Now, I'll say this. When I say that, I'm not being disrespectful. We all know people who are over 75 that can run circles around us. And then we know Joe Biden. Congress has become the most privileged nursing home in the country. It's true. And this isn't anything to play with. These are people making decisions on the future of our economy. These are people making decisions on our national security. We need to know they're at the top of their game. And now let's talk about the border. I can't believe this is happening in the United States of America. 9 million illegal immigrants have crossed that border. We had enough fentanyl cross the border last year that would kill every single American. Number 1 cause of death for adults 18 to 45, fentanyl. And don't think for a second China doesn't know what they're doing when they send it over. Now, when I was governor of South Carolina, we passed the toughest illegal immigration law in the country. President Obama sued us over it, and we won. We're going to take what we did in South Carolina and we're going to go national with it. We will do a national E-Verify program so that every business has to prove that the people they hire are in this country legally. We will defund sanctuary cities once and for all. No more We'll put 25,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. We'll go back to the Remain in Mexico policy so that no one even steps foot on U.S. soil. And instead of catch and release, we'll go to catch and deport. That is how we will fix what's happening. Now look at what happened a couple of weeks ago. Congress had a border bill. And in that border bill, the good part about it was it actually strengthened asylum laws. We have to do that. 3 million illegals came in under Trump's watch because our asylum laws weren't strong enough. The weaker parts was it didn't have the Remain in Mexico policy. We need to have that. And it had a 5,000 person threshold. We can't even have a 1 person threshold. But what went wrong was Congress should have gotten in a room and strengthened the bill and come out and done something. But Donald Trump told them not to do anything until after the general election because it would hurt him. We can't wait one more day. Congress needs to get in a room, pass a strong border bill, and Trump needs to stay out of it. And you know, I was told, and I've been watching in the news, y'all have had a lot of conversations about abortion. And this is what I'll tell you. I respectfully don't think the fellas know how to talk about it. When it comes to an issue like this, it is personal for every woman and every man. And it needs to be dealt with respectfully. Now let's look at how this happened. Prior to 1973, you had 46 state laws on abortion. And in 1973, you had unelected justices throw out the 46 state laws and say abortion anytime, anywhere, for any reason. I think a wrong was made right when the unelected justices said they shouldn't have done it and they put it back in the hands of the people. Yeah. Now, I personally am pro-life, not because the Republican Party tells me to be, but because my husband was adopted and I had trouble having both of my children. But I don't judge anyone for being pro-choice any more than I want you to judge me for being pro-life. So as these states are voting, some of them have gone more pro-life. I welcome that. Some have gone more pro-choice. I wish that wasn't the case, but the people decided, and I respect that. The conversation that we've had is, should there be a federal law? And what bothers me is no one is telling you the truth. The only way to have a federal law on abortion is you have to have a majority of the House, 60 Senate votes, and a signature of a president. We haven't had 60 Republican senators in over 100 years. We might have 45 pro-life senators. So no Republican president can ban abortions any more than a Democrat president can ban these state laws. So what can we do? We need to find consensus. Can't we agree to ban late-term abortions? Can't we agree to encourage adoptions and good quality adoptions? Can't we agree that doctors and nurses who don't believe in abortion shouldn't have to perform them? Can't we agree that contraception should be accessible? And can't we agree that no state law should say to a woman who's gotten an abortion that she's going to jail or getting the death penalty? Let's start there. No more demonizing this issue. We have to humanize this issue. I had a roommate in college who was raped. I wouldn't wish on anyone that they go through what she went through wondering if she was pregnant. Everybody has a story. Let's be respectful of their story. And when it comes to what happened in Alabama, both of my children are from fertility. We need to make sure that every parent has access to getting any fertility treatments that they need to have the blessing of a baby. And the decisions of what happens to those embryos should be strictly between the parents and the doctor, no one else. So now that we got that out of the way, growing up in rural South Carolina, my parents always taught me, you take care of those who take care of you. But I'm going to ask you if we're taking care of those who take care of us. Right now in America, over 35,000 of our veterans are homeless. 1 in 3 suffers from PTSD or thoughts of suicide. We lose 22 heroes a day to suicide. If a veteran needs a doctor's appointment at the VA, on average, it takes 29 days. Why 29 days? Because on the 30th day, they can go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. So midway through the 29 days, they get a call to reschedule, and the clock starts all over again. It's shameful how we treat our veterans. Now, I'm the proud wife of a combat veteran who served in Afghanistan. And when Michael came home to us, that was a lot of prayers answered. But that was the easy part. When we got home, life got hard. Michael couldn't hear loud noises. He couldn't be in crowds. Life had passed him by for the year that he was gone, and the transition was tough. We can't just love our men and women when they're gone. We gotta love them when they come back home, too. Let's do better than just the 2-week transition. Let's take care of them for the long haul. And the way we do that is we need telehealth, so they can get the mental health care they need right when they need it. They should be able to go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. They've earned that right. And I think the best way we take care of VA health care, I think every member of Congress should have to get their health care from the VA. You've ever seen, guaranteed. And speaking of military, let's talk about national security. The world is on fire, literally. We've got a war in Europe. We've got a war in the Middle East. You've got North Korea testing intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of hitting the U.S. You've got China doing cyber attacks on our infrastructure. And now you have Russia doing blinding satellites, so we can't see what's happening or what they're doing. Make no mistake, none of that would have happened had we not had that debacle in Afghanistan. The idea that Michael and his military brothers and sisters who served there had to watch us leave Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night without telling our allies who stood shoulder to shoulder with us for decades because we asked them to be there. Think about what that said to our friends. More importantly, think about what that said to our enemies. We need a president who's going to have moral clarity. Someone who knows the difference between right and wrong, who knows the difference between good and bad. And this is the time when I was at the UN, I told countries what America was for and what America was against. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I wanted them to respect America. And you look at what Trump said 2 weeks ago in South Carolina. He went and said that he would encourage Putin to invade our allies. Now think about that. That means Trump is siding with a thug where 500,000 people have been wounded or killed because of the invasion in Ukraine. Trump is siding with a dictator who kills his political opponents. Trump is siding with a madman.
It's true. It's true.
Hey, go home.
Does that, don't get upset at them, because my husband and his military brothers and sisters sacrifice every day for her right to be able to do that. Trump sided with a madman who's made no bones about the fact that he wants to destroy America. And he chose to side with him over our allies who stood with us after 9/11? America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends. When we start focusing on strength, when we start focusing on making sure that the enemies know that we're back, that's when we will start to see peace again. That's when things will happen. The last thing we want to do is retreat. The main thing a president and Congress should always focus on is how to prevent war. Period. Preventing war and keeping Americans safe should be our #1 priority. So we know what to do with national security. We know what to do with domestic policy. But now let's talk about the politics of all of it and what you in Virginia are going to do about it. Because this is a decision between, do we want more of the same or do we want a new direction? More of the same is not just Joe Biden, more of the same is Donald Trump. And I want to make it clear, this is not personal for me. I voted for Donald Trump twice. I was proud to serve America in his administration. But the reality is, chaos follows him. And we can't be a country in disarray and a world on fire and go through 4 more years of chaos. We won't survive it. And let the last couple of months be our judge. You know, I announced I was running for president a year ago. It's been a roller coaster of a ride. We had 14 men in the race. We defeated a dozen of those fellas. I just got one more I got to catch up to. And the day of the New Hampshire election, Trump had said that I was going to be down by 35 points, and we got 43% of the vote. And he literally was unhinged. I don't know if you saw it. He was unhinged. All he did was talk about revenge and my dress. And the next day he said anybody who supports her is barred permanently from MAGA. We had a little fun with that. We sold t-shirts that said barred permanently. We sold over 25,000 t-shirts when he said it. But what's important to know, when you're running for president, you're trying to bring people into your fold. You don't push people out of your club. And then the next day, he tried to get the RNC to name him the presumptive nominee. No, we don't anoint kings in this country. We have elections, and we let the people's voices be heard. And then he lost a couple of court cases and had some judgments, and then he went on a rant about being a victim. My whole point in saying all of that is at no point did he talk about the American people. At no point did he talk about the fact that we're $34 million in debt. At no point did he talk about the fact that only 31% of 8th graders in our country are proficient in reading. At no point did he talk about the lawlessness on the border. At no point did he talk about what's happening in our cities. At no point did he talk about the wars around the world. All he did was talk about himself. And that's the problem, because it's not about him. It's about the American people. Spoken loudly. 70% of Americans say they don't want Joe Biden or Donald Trump. 60% of Americans have said Joe Biden's too old and Donald Trump's too old to run for president. But this is bigger than even that. This is about where exactly is the Republican Party going to go? Because that's what I'm looking at. The Republican Party used to be about fiscal discipline. It used to be about shrinking the size of government. But under Donald Trump, he put us $8 trillion in debt in just 4 years, more than any other president. Now, he loves to say that was because of COVID. Less than 20% was because of COVID. He didn't clean any of the agencies. He didn't shrink government. He grew it. And now what's happened? You see the Republicans are following suit by opening up those pet projects. And then it used to be that the Republican Party believed in peace through strength. We always knew the more allies we had, the stronger we were together. And now Trump is pulling everybody away from that. And they're making it isolationist. And they're making you think that you have to choose between Ukraine and Israel or the border. That's just a lie. You don't have to choose that. And then you look at what he's doing with the actual party organization itself. Now the RNC, before the primary's over, they're replacing the head of the RNC with his daughter-in-law. His campaign manager is going to be director of operations. And they've now announced that the RNC is no longer about winning races up and down the ticket, it's about Donald Trump. Now, he has spent $60 million of his campaign contributions on personal court cases. And now the RNC is going to be his own personal legal fund. There's a resolution that has been put down that has said that you can't use the RNC for his legal fees. Now, you have committeemen here. You got 3 votes from Virginia. What I have said to the press, what I have said to anybody that will listen, we need to see those votes on the record. We need to see how every state votes when it comes to that. And we also need to acknowledge that all we have done under Donald Trump is lose. We lost in 2018, we lost in 2020, we lost in 2022. Even a couple weeks ago, we lost the vote on Israel. We lost the vote on the border. The RNC chair lost her job. He had his fingerprints on all of that. Everything Donald Trump does, we lose. And at some point, maybe we need to say, maybe Donald Trump is the problem. And everybody in the media is trying to figure out, why does she keep fighting? Why think they finally accepted that I'm not trying to be vice president. And I've said very clearly, this is not about a future political party, political career of anything. If that were the case, I would have gotten out a long time ago. The reason I'm doing this is for my kids and your kids and grandkids. Yes. generation. Look at what they went through. I'm looking at some here. They went through COVID, which was traumatic for them. Then they see this $34 trillion in debt. They get that they're going to have to do something with that and that they're going to be responsible. They're worried about finding a job. They're worried about how they're going to make ends meet. They don't ever see a possibility of owning a home. And they worry about wars breaking out. And all of that is under the tent in America that's anger and division and hatred. And then we want to know why there's so much stress, anxiety, and depression from them? They don't deserve that. Our kids deserve to know what normal feels like. There's nothing normal about Joe Biden allowing millions of illegal immigrants to come into our country and nobody stopping them. There's nothing normal about Joe Biden caring more about gender pronouns than whether our kids can read them. There's nothing normal about these wars around the world. And under Donald Trump, there's nothing normal about him criticizing the supporters of an opponent and calling them, saying they're barred permanently from MAGA. There's nothing normal under Donald Trump to spend campaign contributions on personal legal fees. There's nothing normal about Donald Trump siding with a dictator over our allies who stood with us after 9/11. And there's nothing normal with the fact that Joe Biden calls his opponents fascists and Donald Trump calls his opponents vermin. None of this is normal. Can you imagine, just for a second, imagine a country where we can sit down at the dinner table and not have a political fight? Imagine a country where you can go to work and say what you think and not worry about being demoted. Imagine a country where we can strongly disagree and not hate each other over it. You know, 9 months ago, I dropped my husband Michael off at 4 a.m. for another year-long deployment. And I watched him and 230 soldiers pick up their 2 duffel bags of belongings to go to a country they'd never been, all in the name of protecting America. They're willing to sacrifice their lives and their families because they still believe in this amazing experiment that is America. So if they're willing to sacrifice for us there, shouldn't we be willing to fight for America here? Because we have a country to save. But in order to save her, it takes a lot of courage. Courage from everybody here. Courage for me to run. And courage for every one of you to know, don't complain about what happens in a general election if you don't vote in this primary. It matters. When I announced, they asked me what my motivations were for doing this. And I said, you know, my parents came here 50 years ago to an America that was strong and proud and full of possibilities. I want them to know that country again. I'm doing this for Michael and his military brothers and sisters because they need to know their sacrifice matters. They need to know that we love our country. I'm doing this for my daughter who just got married, and I saw how hard it was for her and her husband to buy a home. The average home buyer in America now is 49 years old. The American dream is leaving them. And I'm doing this for my son who's a senior in college. And I'm tired of watching him write papers of things he doesn't believe in just to get an A. That's not us. That's not America. And for the first time, 81% of Americans don't think their kids are going to live as good of a life as we did. We can't be okay with that. I'm not okay with that. We do have a country to save. But if we want to save her, now is the time we get to work. Virginia gets to vote early. So you need to vote early, and you need to take 10 people with you when you vote. If you don't know where to vote, you can go to nikkihaley.com/Virginia, and we spell out exactly where you should go. So if you can, take a yard sign with you. If you can't put a yard sign in your yard, put it in the back of your car. Email everybody you know, text all your friends, and let them know that we need to make our voices heard. You would be shocked at how many of your friends and family are just general election voters. I want you to give them a message from me. In a general election, we're given a choice. In a primary, we make our choice. And so I'll say this, if you will join us in this movement, if you will get out and make 10 people go with you, if you will keep going in this fight, I promise you, our best days are yet to come. Thank you very much.